we want to judge ourselves or whatever we choose to do about the fact that we're not on the path we set, instead of expanding our horizon that the path may be brighter.
Welcome to the 1% Edge podcast, where we dive into the journeys of extraordinary guests committed to getting 1% better every day. Today's topic is one of resilience and reinvention. And if the podcast is half as good as my podcast prep calls have been with our guests, folks, I think you're in for a treat. So with no further ado, to help us out with that today, I'm honored to have Tom LeNoble, a coach, speaker, CEO of the Academy for Coaching Excellence, a fellow podcast host of the Opening Pathways podcast. And if that wasn't enough, he's also an author with his new book called My Life in Business Suits, Hospital Gowns, and High Heels. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Hi, Carlos. Thank you for having me with you today.
I'm excited to have you here, and it's going to be a fun conversation. How about we start with framing for our audience what we mean by resilience and reinvention in your perspective?
You know, resilience is really about getting back up and moving forward with grace, clarity, and ease. So I've experienced this a number of times in my life where things have happened where I've had to use the power of resilience. I see resilience and taking risks, for that matter, as, you know how we use weights to exercise our bicep or tricep? Well, I think risk and resilience are the same. When you exercise them, they get stronger and stronger, and they serve you even better when you need them.
It's interesting, Tom, because it's kind of been a theme for me this year, and I'm stealing this from one of my clients. He had this saying that growth comes through struggle. Same thing, right? You know, when you struggle through something and you come out the other end, that's how you grow as a human being, as a professional. Now, Tom, in knowing you, what little I do know, you've had a hugely successful career. Most people from the outside would say, you know, resilience. I mean, Tom, you've had it made. You had all these great jobs. Can you give me some examples, or are you willing to share an example where you faced some of that resilience in your life?
Sure, Carlos. One of my favorites is when I tell people that I was one of the first 100 employees at Facebook. I think I was 57, but who's counting? And then what they want to know next immediately is, did you get the stock? Well, I did a little calculation before we started today, and if I had not sold one share, I would be before you today worth $250 million. But I sold it all, and I don't regret it for a minute. I'll tell you more about that later. But the thing that's really been an exercise in resilience in this career I've had, which is whether heading customer service for Walmart, global service operations for Palm, or at Facebook and beyond, is that during that whole time, I've had 2 life-threatening illnesses. I've been given 6 months to live 3 times. It takes some resilience to keep moving through that and keep going. I'm a big believer in the fact that every storm runs out of rain. There's always something on the other side. The sun is still shining even when we think the clouds are the thickest. All
right. So, I mean, I know a friend that went through one of those scares, not 2. How did you, if I could ask, how'd you keep your mindset in the right place? How'd you stay so positive, even though, I'm assuming not only did you feel crappy mentally, but even physically?
Well, I had some experiences growing up and in early years that you can read in my book, but I had to test resilience out earlier. And I think that I'm one of those people that when you tell me I can't do something or that there's nothing to do, I kind of get the feeling of, well, watch this. So I'm sure I confused a few doctors when they told me you have 6 months to live, and I laughed. I thought, that doesn't make any sense to me because there has to be a way. And that's happened a number of times where I remember one time the cancer progressed and they said it's in 5 locations. There's nothing we can do for you. And I kind of chuckled because I thought, that's not possible. There's always something to do. And I think that's the mindset of resilience, is seeing that there's hope, there's a possibility, there's something you can do, even if it is winding down your life, that mindset creates something where possibilities occur. In that situation, I found a doctor at UCLA, and I determined that there was something I could try. And so I did. I actually wrote them a $500,000 check to be able to try two treatments that the insurance company wouldn't approve. Later on, I asked them for an explanation of benefits, excuse me. And they said, well, it's not going to get paid. I said, no, I need it for taxes. Well, they filed it and the insurance company paid and I got my money back. So to me,
Wow.
the willingness of even doing any of that is what resilience is all about.
Well, one of the things I like about your story, Tom, it isn't, hey, I think I'm going to get better, so I'll just have a belief and not do anything about it. Tom, you took action and you just, you didn't give up and you found a way to get there. And I think that's a big takeaway for for anyone
Thank you.
listening.
Thank you. Well, I sit before you 13 years of metastatic cancer. And as I always like to say, I'm still here.
Well, that's amazing. So, what possessed you to write your book? Just curious, and it's got a
You know,
very interesting title, of course.
yes, it's a great story too, a great story. I wrote it about 15 years ago and it was so cathartic that I put it on a shelf and didn't do anything with it. And then a couple years ago, I decided I have a year in process that I do leading into the new year that served me well over 35 years. And so it came up as part of that process to either trash it or go with it, run with it. And I decided to run with it. And I want you to know that every possible door that could open either cracked or swung wide open in the process. But my purpose of writing it is what felt like three different lives, what felt like three disparate parts of my life were never going to come together as one. And I realized through the process that who we are today, we would not be if it weren't for those parts of our lives, no matter how outrageous, no matter how shameful, no matter how exhilarating, no matter how successful, no matter how what, that all of that together is who you are today. So I wrote the book with that intent, is to help the reader see that whatever their life has been, whatever those stages that have been, they're all part of who you are today, and offered some ideas of how they might apply some of these stories in their own lives and the way they think about it.
See, I told you it was going to be pretty inspiring already. So, Tom, you said a year in process. What does that mean? Because I think I'm going to steal a little tip from you.
Yes, I actually have a workshop about it that I do as well. So I'll give you the thumbnail sketch of it. I take towards the end of the year, sometime in about the second, third week of December, and I research everything that happened during that year. And I make notes from it, my calendar, my any daytimer I have, as I look at putting things away to do taxes. I review that. I gather everything, and then I go through a process of bucketing those things, if you will, into like things, and taking out what speaks to me the most as things that I need to either finish or most likely let go of. And then I use ritual of some sort, very simple, something to let go of those things so I'm not carrying them into the new year, something that was either high energy, didn't turn out the way I wanted, or is just even complete. And from that, as I start my new year, I set intentions for the new year. And those intentions usually, in fact, almost always over these years I've done it, have proven to really generate success in my life and reaching the goals and dreams I want to do.
So, are intentions like goals?
Well,
You want to aspire to?
goals are kind of that weird thing, and I love goals. I love when people set goals. In fact, I really believe that if you don't write them down, you're skipping a part of it. But I like intentions because, especially around the new year, people join gyms, people do all these things. I'm going to lose 50 pounds or 20 pounds, whatever it might be. And we kind of set ourselves up to even fail. And so I find with intentions, it just feels like I'm setting my intention to it. I'm pointing myself in that direction. I'm calling it to me versus something that I've set in stone that I don't have the ability to use a pencil and erase it or change it. Because as we start down the path, sometimes things change in our life. And as a result, you feel like you accomplished something or you're moving in that direction versus you missed your goal.
Yeah, it's I forget who said this, but energy flows where focus goes. Basically, when you have a focus, an intention in a way, then your energy flows that way, and you start thinking of ways to get there. And
Yes.
in fact, every year what I do is I put a target for the year, and I might have some sub targets on it, call it a goal. But over the years, I go, you know what? If I hit it or not, it's not the whole thing. It's just, hey, I'm going to put my thought process this year of how do I get closer to it? How close can I get? Can I even surpass it? And this year, I wrote a big audacious one up there. So we'll see how close I get because,
Yeah.
but at least it's got my brain thinking about it,
It's
moving in
got
that
it.
direction.
It's got it. I even take the next step and break it down into quarters and make a visual of it and map it out. Now, there's times that I take something that I've mapped out for the first quarter and I may move it to the second quarter or third quarter, but it gives me a snapshot. The other good side of it is things happen in our lives that we didn't know we were going to be challenged with or new adventures. Well, you get to write that down, and often it says, I didn't do what I said I was going to do in the first quarter because something else came and took its place. Let me move it over here to the second or third quarter to still get it done. So it keeps it alive and kind of alive and breathing in front of you.
I like that. Well, our listeners are going to still think about you've had the successful career, you've done so well. Have you had any missteps? Have you gone down a path where you realize this is not where I want to be? And then, in two questions, how'd you realize it, and how'd you get out of it?
Well, yes, and you'll have to read the book to understand what the high heels is all about. But I woke up one day and said, this isn't the path, and started on a new adventure and a new path. And often what happens is we set a path for ourselves and it doesn't turn out the way we want and we get really disappointed. And I think what we don't realize is we learn things as we start down this path that we've set for us that maybe opens up a new path. And we want to judge ourselves or whatever we choose to do about the fact that we're not on the path we set instead of expanding our horizon that the path may be brighter. I remember one time I was in a silent retreat somewhere and it was on 365 acres that were really gorgeous out in the woods by the ocean. And I came upon this path and it was such a metaphor for my life because the path went into two paths. There were two ways I could have gone. One was very bright and sunny. The other looked really gnarly with vines and stuff. And I stood there and used that as a metaphor. And it was one of the times I'd been given some 6 months to live and said, which path am I going to take? I chose to choose the dark, gnarly one. And the great news about this is later I went back because the first path that looked so bright and sunny went nowhere. The path I chose opened up when I got through what appeared to be dark to this opening of a wonderful grassy knoll. And I could see a really far wide and see the ocean. And I looked down and believe it or not, I still have it today. There was a rock shaped as a heart right at my feet. So the path may not look like the right path, but sometimes it is the right path. We just have to be willing to take a risk to see what's on the other side.
Great point. Great point. All right. So I'm curious at Facebook, I'm sure you got some good stories. Are there any that you could share with us? You know,
Well, yeah, I can. One of my favorite that people love to hear, and then I want to tie up what happened with the $250 million with you, Carlos. But one of my favorite that people really enjoy hearing is I actually interviewed with Mark when he was 19.
wow.
And I was old enough to be Mark's father at the time. In fact, at Facebook, everybody that was there, I was called the adult in the room. I skewed the average age of the company dramatically because it was still, Facebook was still only in colleges. And so everyone there was fresh out of college working their dream job. They deferred business school, law school, whatever they were going to do just for the opportunity to work at Facebook. And so I had this team that was pretty amazing of all really what they were was kids. And the challenges of that were great. But I learned that they were really smart. It was a real education. I'd had it before with the generational thing, but it was another one of those where you got to see that all of us are really starting on a path when we're young. We're trying to find our way. And I think those of us that have been a little further along the path have a responsibility to help, not judge, because we like to say they're lazy, they've all got tattoos, they don't wear real shoes, or whatever it is we want to say. When we had that in our generation too, and likely our parents were looking at us saying something similar. Our big one in my generation was, if you'd only apply yourself like your brother. But interviewing with Mark at 19 was great because he was still a kid himself, a very bright man, and you could tell that immediately. But as you can imagine, I walked up the stairs to this little office that was over a sandwich shop before they had a real office, and my suit. And as I got up there and walked around the corner to 15 people that were all young enough to be my child, a few liquor bottles, and definitely a lot of pizza boxes, all I thought I should do is take off something. And then I met with Mark, who was in his signature sandals and t-shirt at the time, and I really felt like I had to take off something. So I took off my jacket. But we had a great conversation, and the product, which I knew was going to do something, I just didn't know what, and the willingness for people to share information with each other was astounding, and it drew me to it. So I went there. It was a great experience.
That's amazing. All right. So as you told that story, I have a question for you. You know, you, there's a lot of folks that have gotten older in the workforce and are looking to get, hey, they got one more run in them, but now they're older. And I just wonder what advice might you have for those folks? Because, I mean, they face what you face, saying you went into a young company with young folks, being the older person. What advice would you give them as they interview or try to get, work for that, the last run or two that they have in their career?
For me, I can only say my experience, which happened is I like to say I retired being retired to be inspired, because I actually did retire. I was pretty young. I fell in love and traveled the world, and then I realized a few years later that I had much more to give and much more to share, which is how I've created the Tom LeNoble brand and doing what I'm doing today. And it's this interesting thing that retirement seems so much like you work so hard to be able to lounge in the lawn chair and sip on whatever your favorite beverage is. And maybe that's great for some people. We worked hard, and I'm not saying don't do that. But if you feel like you have something else in you, don't buy into the fact that you're too old, that you haven't kept up, or whatever that is, because it's simply not true. You can take all the things you've learned and apply them to something new. And I really want to give you a tip. Make it something you always wanted to do. I'm coaching a CEO right now who went through a long, amazing career, and he just isn't ready to stop, but he doesn't want to go at that same pace or have that same responsibility. So we went through a process to talk about, well, what is it you want to do? What did you always want to do that you didn't get to do? And so as he articulated that, we're now formulating a plan for him to be able to use all those things he did as a CEO, what it is that he wants to do, what he never got to do, and turn that into a business venture that is also enjoyable, something that will speak to the dreams he always wanted to do, and it's going to allow him to sit in the lawn chair every now and then and sip on his favorite beverage.
Nice. Yeah, I've got a number of friends that are, I mean, I guess they're just coming at that age, right? They're either thinking about retirement or they're already retired. And it's interesting how some have made the transition to just lounge around and have a good life because they've enjoyed it, and others still stay really busy. In fact, a couple of them are really nervous about
Yeah.
staying busy. Like, what am I going to do with myself? And I think partially because their careers have defined them so much.
Well, we get this mindset that we're supposed to do it a certain way, or now we're too old and we're not relevant, or we haven't kept up. It's really not real. What you've learned and the wisdom you've shared along the way, there are people who want to know about it. So shift the way you're perceiving it, shift how you might have done it before into a different gear of how you might use what you've learned and the wisdom you've gained and the skill and talent you have in a new way. There's opportunities out there everywhere, especially in the world we live in today.
Well, that was going to be one of my questions for you too. So, hey, even though you sold the stock early, I'm assuming you did pretty well for yourself. You could be you could be sitting around sipping margaritas, traveling the world, but you've decided, you've decided to put a lot on yourself. You do the coaching, you do the podcast thing. You know, and now an author rolling out this, this book that you got that's out. I mean, that's a lot of work on you. Are you enjoying it?
I'm having a ball, and while I didn't get the 250 million that I couldn't have gotten, the reason I say I have no regrets is because what I really do in life is I'm a philanthropist. I do all these things you're hearing about to feed my philanthropy, which focuses on things like first gen students, youth in the arts, relevant women's issues, hunger, all of them service to others. And so while I didn't get the 250 million, I did okay. I have a very comfortable lifestyle. But what it did afford me to do is to be able to give back. And I personally think when we've done well, even when we haven't done well, we have a responsibility to give back. What you get from giving is really a wonderful thing. I call it the philanthropy mindset, the philanthropist mindset, actually, because many of us will say, oh, I hear it all the time. Oh, wow, Tom, that's great. I hope I can make it one day to be able to do that, or something of that nature. And what I realize what they're saying is they think it only revolves around money, that it's got
Right.
to be, big checks and galas and their names on buildings. Well, it's not just giving money, it's living with that the philanthropist mindset. It's not your budget line, it's a line about your life story and what you're giving back. So we shift a little bit about what can I give? How can I make this moment better for someone? Where can I show up with my time and talent and use that with new connections? There's all these things that we can do. And remember, money solves problems. Mindset builds movements.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. So one of the things that we talked about before this is, and quite selfishly, I always talked about, hey, when I grow up, I want to be a philanthropist. But really, I mean, joking aside, it's really more from a perspective of it's easier to give when you have a lot of money, was my mindset. And in talking to you, the light bulb went off. I go, whether you're white collar, blue collar, worth millions, or just have pennies in the bank, anybody can be a philanthropist. Anybody can give of their
Absolutely.
time and energy.
You can give of your talent and your expertise. You can share your skills. You can save people time and pain because of the things you've learned along the journey. You can use it for advocacy and influence. You can speak up, open doors, and amplify other people. You can shift your mindset from how much I can give to how much I can contribute.
I like it. All right. I might start calling myself a philanthropist. I just got to get used to the word. Um, you've had an amazing journey and you've had multiple chapters. Is there, and we've had some big lessons already, but if you had to go, hey, this is another big lesson that I got out of my career that you would love to share with others so that, maybe, they can, try to apply it in their own lives. What might that be?
When you hear the words, I can't do that, I'm not smart enough, I'm not educated enough, I don't have the experience, take those words you're hearing in your ear and know they aren't coming from your true heart. They're just a reaction that you learned along the way. Give it a whirl, try something new. I think you'll be really surprised of what can happen when you come from your heart and not those voices that we hear that tell us that we're less than sometimes. So that's what I would say to people.
Pretty amazing. Uh, I look at this podcast when I started it, Tom, it took me months to get it off the ground. And it wasn't until I wanted it to be really good. And hopefully I still hope it's going to be really good. And a good friend of mine says, Carlos, you know how you get to being a really good podcaster? I go, how? He goes, you start. You might start being lousy and it's all right because then the next one will be better and the next one will be better. And you just go down that path. But if you don't start, you're never going to be a good, podcaster or whatever else you decide to do in
True
life.
about everything in life, isn't it, Carlos? You have to start. I mean, if you think about it, we didn't stand up and walk until we crawled. So we just don't suddenly spontaneously know how to do something. We have to learn it, especially if it's new to us.
But I think also in life, you got to relearn some lessons, right? To your point about we crawled before we walked, you start experiencing some success in your life and in your career, and you expect to be successful in other ventures, right? And other things that you try. Like, hey, I was good at that, so I want to be good at other things. So that's your expectation. And I think it's okay to have that expectation. But like you said, it's also good to remind yourself you're going to stumble, fall on your face, get yourself back up. And it's that attitude or mindset that made you successful to begin with. You just got to
Absolutely.
continue to apply it.
Absolutely. I like to, when I coach people, I like to talk to them about evidence because once we start exploring, we find evidence of how you've already done that, not once, but many times. It may be something new now, but when you reflect on the evidence of the things you've accomplished in life, it's just feeling new, just like all those other times, and you're still here.
Great point. All right, Tom, you've had an amazing career. If our audience wanted to get to know you a little bit better, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, you can reach me at tomlenoble.com. I'm on LinkedIn. As Carlos said, I'm an author, I'm a speaker. I have this, I'm an author with my new book, which is really great to have out. And I'm also the CEO of the Academy for Coaching Excellence, which is a coaching academy. We train coaches around the world. It's been there for over 20 years. It's really exciting about what we do there because we just perpetuate this idea of coaching so that people can find their goals and dreams and do it with some clarity, focus, and ease. And so those are really great. And I'd love for your audience to also know about philanthropy. I want to leave you with a thought. It isn't what just leaves your wallet, it's what leaves your heart.
Nice. All right. Um, so, Tom, what's your 1% edge? What are you working on these days to get 1% better every day?
As you might imagine, I'm one of these people that I'll take on almost anything. I get excited about things that people bring to me or that we talk about and about possibilities. And so I have a team around me because I call it using the energy of support. You know how it is when you feel like you're not moving fast. Well, one of those symptoms when you're not moving fast is you're not using the energy of support. We're focused on something that is either core to us or we shouldn't be doing. We should be able to be there to show up for what we do best. So I can get involved in all kinds of things, and the team around me will have a meeting with me and remind me that's duplicative, or you don't need to spend that. We already do that for you, or where are you going with that? What's that going to bring you? Or just something as simple, have you looked at your calendar lately? So for me to get 1% better, I'm trying to do a better job as those things come to me to get excited and maybe glean from them something I can use, but not try and just dive into them head first. A recent story is I've been doing the recording of when I did the recording of my book, rather, they told me you have to do this in like at the most 3-hour chunks over 8 or 9, 10 days. And so said that doesn't work for me. So I decided I'm just going to go for it. Well, I did a 12.5-hour day recording. Well, I'm not sure that was the wisest thing. It felt really good when it was over because I got it done. But I can remember my physical body didn't like me sitting still that long, and my voice sure didn't like me speaking that long. So that's the kind of stuff I'm working on to get 1% better, Carlos.
Well, I'm with you. I'm trying to build a team around myself as well, and trying to get some not just advice but help because we all sure enough need it. And so, Tom, I got another question for you. I mean, you've been faced with adversity, health issues, and you've come out the other side. And for listeners, they're going to go, "Oh my God!" But of course, he is. He's such a positive attitude. Has Tom? Do you ever feel down in the dumps?
Yeah, Carlos, I have this thing I do with myself. I mean, if I look back, it wasn't as easy as it is now, or I don't do it as efficiently. But when you're living with something that I'm living with, you never know when a lab result or the next scan is going to deliver something to you challenging. I remember about the evidence of what I've done before first. I look at my watch and I go, Tom, you can have 20 or 30 minutes. Stomp your feet, cry, raise your fists, do whatever you want to do. And then because I know it's true, get on with it. because those things aren't going to get us anywhere. So I try and let a little of it off, but then get focused. And yes, that's not going to be that easy for everyone, but I guarantee you, once you exercise the muscle of resilience a bit, it does get more effective and a lot easier, because you see the benefit of understanding there are no do-overs. Where we are in the present, where we're standing is where we are. And that's the place to begin. And so lift yourself up, look forward, and start exploring.
Love it. All right, Tom. I really appreciate you being on the podcast. This has been a great episode, and I appreciate our friendship. I'm happy that I got to know you through the podcast.
I agree, Carlos. Thank you so much for having me on, and it is a delight to know you.
Thanks, Tom. All right, folks, that does it for this week's episode. I hope you got some value from our conversation. And if you did, please comment back, subscribe. We would thoroughly appreciate it. Until next time, I wish you nothing but the greatest success. Thanks again, Tom.